Hello and welcome back to Hosted Bar. As always, I'm Erin Ogden here with Don Malarney. I am going to start with my drink because I think it's super pretty because I didn't make it. It's an autumnal spritz. It is apple cider, prosecco, and club soda with little apple slices so I can pretend it's healthy.
Oh, that sounds refreshing and very yummy.
Right?
Oh,
It is. I think they could have added a little bit of like cinnamon sprinkle on top, but yeah, since I didn't make it, I get to say how cool it is and how cute it is. How about you, Don? Or what are you drinking today?
well, I'm kind of giggling because I know the seasons are changing and it's what, maybe the first day of fall or maybe tomorrow. I don't know. But anyways, I'm like, I'm going for something warm, which I kind of giggle because some people might think I'm a little odd, but it's hot water, lemon juice, cinnamon, but cayenne pepper.
Oh, look at that. A little bit of kick.
I like the kick in it. And it's one thing that I'm like, I don't know, on these weird, cold, wet days, I'm like, I want something warm and refreshing, but also yours sounds way better than mine now. So jealous.
It's better because I didn't have to make it. So, this is the one where you and I talk about our last discussion with our guest. And Gaurav from Embed Biosciences talked to us not about cool science or anything, but about team building and hiring, which um, I think he has such a great way of thinking about that. And I talked to a couple of different people. I was at an event today about hiring and how my number one takeaway kind of from my discussions with him is you have to, when hiring someone, you have to give them the opportunity to reveal themselves to you. And that's both time and well-crafted questions. So many times in hiring, you just kind of want to get it done and
Mhm.
you depend, and there's so many times where you just depend on paper, right? You depend on the resume, you depend on a cover letter, and that's not really revealing them as an employee. It reveals them as someone who can write a CV or hire someone to write their CV, and really giving them that opportunity to reveal what kind of employee they'll actually be, and that can't be rushed. I heard a good analogy um this morning when I was on, it's like cooking a turkey. Yeah, you can try and crank up the heat and it'll look perfect on the outside, nice and brown and crispy and done in 2 hours, and it'll be inedible. Some things just take time to do right. And is hiring is just one of those things. So that was my biggest takeaway. How about
Yeah.
you?
I mean, there was a lot of takeaways. And I think, even just as you're talking about that, and even when we had our interview, I was just kept thinking of past experiences and even sometimes too during some of the hires that I've seen over the years, I'm like, who is this person compared to what they told us it would be like. And I think that's the one
Yeah,
thing where some companies are so desperate sometimes that they just need to fill the role and they're not taking the time because time is money, and
mhm.
so I think that's where I just love about him, where he has such, this very research brain, very smart, very technical, but then just to how he brings the human side of things and to
Yeah,
how he's trying to find that person. And it's so true. There's so many resources out there to tell you what questions they're going to ask you, what questions you should be asking. But deep down, are you ever really building that connection with that person to see, are they going to be the right person for our culture? Are they going to fit in? Are they going to create drama? Just because their resume has all of the dots and all the things we're looking for doesn't mean they're going to be open to new training or new
right.
perspectives and all the things.
Right. I think the good point that you just made was that return, like it takes time. Oh my, oh my gosh, I just took a day to do this. But on the flip side, you only took a day to get the right person. Because if you pick the wrong person, how much time do you spend over the next year dealing with it way more than 8 hours,
Yeah.
right?
And
It's that it's that ounce of prevention kind of thing.
create it.
Yeah.
Yes, because in the end, it could create so much more work, more energy. You could even lose team members because of it.
Right?
You know, it's going to
One of
cost you a lot more money if you hire the wrong one.
one of my things that I've been saying a lot lately is if you give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'm going to spend 4 hours honing the axe,
Mm.
right? Because it makes the job, the true job easier. And so I kind of applying it to hiring, and I think that's what Gaurav was saying is you got to spend time honing the axe. Is this the right person to do the job? Is it prepared to do the job? And then preparing that person to actually do the job that it needs. So part of cutting trees, getting the right axe, getting it sharp, getting it figured out to do that, because then you're not doing the grueling work.
Mm. Well, it's kind of like, too, think about it for dating. On the first date, you don't fall in love with somebody and you just marry them. I mean, usually you don't, but you know what I mean? Like, it
I
takes
did.
you got to understand the real true person that's going to be coming out of their shell, or two, they're so nervous, they're so prepared or overthinking of all the things that they're not even showing up as themselves, or they may have a script.
Right. Right. I was talking to our office manager today, and she was like, if you had asked me those questions at the interview, I would have locked up and I would have think and right. And so that if you were only doing a half hour, the true answers won't reveal themselves because they're nervous and they're just trying to go with like what I got. Now, if you can do what Gaurav was saying is like spending that 4 hours, it it unlocks things and you start seeing. And when I say they reveal themselves, that could sound like, oh, you're going to reveal stuff, you suck, or it could be like, no, you actually are exactly the person. I think that can really matter when you have either like someone who's kind of very introverted or shy. It takes them a while to open up, but also you can have some people who are very bombastic and will um you'll kind of be like, whoa, and then realize, no, that's just the show they're putting on. How many times do people put on what they think you want to see versus
Mhm.
what is actually there and maybe what you actually do want to see? Because they guessed wrong what you want to see. And so you see their kind of show choir face rather than their actual.
Well, and I liked too that it was a 4-hour chunk, because I've seen other ones where, whoa, that is a really, really long cycle, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like you get 20 minutes per each person, or you're going to come back a couple days. And then it's just like you're overwhelming the person and you're
Right.
overwhelming the team. And that's where, too, I liked it that it was 4 hours, because seriously, in 4 hours, you should be able to be like, this is someone we should maybe have one more little conversation with, or this is just not the right person. So that's where
Right.
I'm just like, that was a good happy medium.
If you can't get through 4 hours with someone, you're not going to get through hiring, like having them as an employee, right? For
Yeah.
one thing. But if 4 hours goes by fast, that tells you something too.
Yeah. And I would say, so when you think of this even too right now, what's even a good interviewing process that you had before you started your own company?
Um, I have, so this is kind of funny. I think one of the struggles that I have with doing a, because I'm trying to improve our hiring processes, I've never really had a good hiring process. I remember truly being interviewed twice, and
Mm,
both were in like before I could drink. Both were before I was
yeah.
21. One was it when I was going to be a tour guide at a state historical site, and one was for my first job as a lab. And so it was really all the rest of them have been who I know. And the interview of sorts was more of a pro forma.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's been hard for me to pull on my experiences because I I didn't have those interview experiences.
Okay.
Um,
Well, and that's where it gives a good perspective too, of like, even if someone was hiring, let's just say someone like you at your age, your experience, but to like for you to be going interviewing somewhere like you haven't done it in a long time. So you'd be super
right,
nervous. Maybe you really haven't been through a formal one because maybe you've been in your career for so long. And that's where some people hopefully you can get a new perspective of, oh, I didn't think about that. This person switched
right,
careers, haven't done this in a long time. They're
right.
nervous. This would
It's
be a
like
good.
getting divorced and getting out into the dating pool to go back there, right? Like, what? This is not the dating pool I remember. So I did have an interview when I was being a law clerk, but I had seriously just passed out right beforehand because I something with giving blood. I've never passed out giving blood. I've given gallons. And so I was in the interview literally trying not to pass out and trying not to puke. And I still got the job. So I'm assuming I did well, but I could not tell you anything that I said during it because the whole time I was just like, don't pass out. You will not get the job if you pass out.
Which that too, it wasn't probably long enough for you to finally be honest with the person, be like, I just did this today and I'm
I,
human,
I don't know how I must have been green. Like I don't it concerns me who else were the other candidates that they hired me. It turned out working well. I loved being there. But yeah, again, it's how do you let them show what they can do,
And I think you touched on another great point of like how important it is to build connection with people
right?
in your sphere or not, or in the same industry or not, because you never know. The people that you know could be someplace you'll work someday. That they know you, they get to know you, that it's going to be a quicker process. And that's the thing too, where it's like it's good and bad too, where it's like I
Yeah,
hope they don't rush into an interview quick just because this person suggested them. We're still taking that 4-hour interview with them, but also to go back to like it's good to have connection with people because you don't know what your future is or who you need to connect with.
and I think building that rapport and that connection can only happen over time. So the reason why I haven't had a lot of interviews is because my interview was years in the making, right? But then that can be really hard if it's a one-on-one. I think one of the things that I liked from Gaurav was saying that I liked that it was a group, so it wasn't just dependent on one person.
Yeah, because we're all human too. You might be off that day, or I think sometimes we don't always realize the vibe of that person or understanding the true person that you're interviewing. Sometimes you can feel an energy and someone may totally space and not notice the energy or notice a response or notice a gesture that they may be doing. And that's why I think it's good to have a group to be there to kind of notice the things that some of us may have overlooked or, kind of a shiny object. Sometimes we don't always see all the flaws at
Right?
times.
Or that they see something and we think is a flaw and they're like, oh no, no, that's actually a other thing, right? Or oh, can you believe that he wasn't paying it, looking at his computer? I'm like, oh, I think he might actually be, you know, autistic and so things. And does that matter? Like, oh,
Mhm.
you were taking offense for something that shouldn't have. And I think having that diversity of opinion and diversity of, I said, lets people kind of get over some things that maybe could have been good or could have been bad because someone they was just hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think of even too some of my past ones where, I had a great manager that would interview people and he would be like, well, it's not just my opinion. I need the group to, interview them. And so we would do group lunch meetings. And that was almost the real like way to see how they could interact, how flustered
Right.
were they themselves. And it was always interesting for us to then come back and he'd be like, that person was not like that at all with me. And it's like, well, you are the leader of like the group.
Right.
So it was always a good way to kind of get a different filter for people
Mm-hmm.
too.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that though. The group thing though is really, I think, really helpful. And also too, just even from my past now with my staffing days where seeing that kind of process too, where I know it can be frustrating when it is a longer process, but there's reasons behind a longer process, and there's reasons behind those extra steps or those extra meetings. But I think this one's a really cool and efficient way by doing the 4 hour, get the group in there and get it done.
And one thing I was also contemplating is um, using that time, how to use it wisely is a lot of times it's asking kind of the same question, but in different ways, and really give the person opportunity to, um, not use a stock answer, maybe, or uh, clarify what they actually mean when they said
Yeah.
something. And so asking, trying to get to the same point, like, tell me a time that you've had adversity. Okay, well then, and then asking another question that's kind of at, because what you're trying to figure out is how do they handle conflict? How do they kind of self-start? How do they, and so like, okay, so how do you handle reverse? Tell me about a time that you've, dealt with a difficult customer. And so it kind of same question, but not, and I really liked the idea of inviting them to tell a story, a yes and no question, just answer yes or no, right? You're not going to get anything, but kind of in that invitation to tell a story, because you can find out a lot more from them that way.
Yeah. Well, and I loved too that he was all about teaching
Mm,
and
for the
giving
ones
them.
you hired, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's always too a great leadership quality of like for him, even too, since I've gotten to know some of his team, there, other times they've gotten different jobs, and so that's the thing
Hmm.
too, where it's like, while you're here, I want to teach you, I want to train you for whatever success in the future it is. And I think that's one thing too that I think a lot of leaders should have, because no one's permanent, and
Right.
enjoy the time.
I think a lot, and that's a good point. I think so many times people get caught up. I think there's a difference between a leader and a manager. But sometimes managers get caught up in like, well, if I teach them that, then they'll leave me. Like, but what if you don't teach them? That's worse. Like, could you imagine? Like, why would you want to have someone at 80% just because they might leave? So instead,
Yeah.
you want to kind of hamstring them, and you just, so that way nobody wants to hire them. Why would you want to hire them then? If they're not like they're not a good employee, why would you want them?
Yeah. Well, and that's where too, it's like, yeah, this person could check all the boxes of all the experience, all the things you're looking for, but they might not be what you're looking for either, too, where they're not going to be open to ideas or to learn new things, be more efficient. And that's where I feel like too, just being open-minded and to see how, sometimes too, you can be the mentor or mentee and you can role reverse sometimes too.
Yeah.
For people, no matter age or whatnot, that we all have different experiences and different knowledge. And so always be open-minded to that too, that we could probably learn from that person too, even though
Yeah.
we're training them.
And so I think one thing that I kind of appreciate is hiring is one of the scariest things that a company, especially a small company, can do, a small business. Hire your first employee was like the scariest thing ever, right? Because all of a sudden you're responsible for someone. And it can make a big impact when you have, four people and you add a fifth. You've now changed 20%, right, of your team. And so it can be such a stressful thing that a lot of people avoid it. And I think his approach and his kind of calmness about it, I think shows that it doesn't, well, it's never going to be unstressful. It doesn't have to be in something you have to avoid. And it shouldn't be something you avoid, because there are ways forward to make sure that it can work.
Yeah, I love
There's
that.
so many business owners I talk about that hiring, just like I was talking to one, they're like, I built my business so I don't have to hire people. Like, really? Like that's a, you'd rather just do all the work?
Yeah.
Um, because it can be such an anxiety driven thing. And I think he did a good job of showing that with thought and planning, it, like most things with thought and planning, it doesn't have to be panic and anxiety. You don't have to have a panic attack every time it comes up. And it also kind of allows you to let people go, because there are so many times that you don't want to let someone go because then you have to replace them.
Yeah. To go through it all again.
Right? 'Cause, oh my God, I can't go through hiring. Let's just keep this sucky person, because you don't want to replace it. And this, I think, by having a better hiring, it gives you a chance to have that freedom to say this isn't the right fit. Let's do that. Because even Gaurav, I guarantee, doesn't have a 100% success rate.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it just doesn't happen, and that's okay.
And that's where I feel like I've asked this question a couple of times now. And then the next time I've seen them, they don't have that employee anymore. But I have kind of asked a few different people when they've told me some of their challenges or whatnot. And I go, so how much is this costing you? Your energy, your team,
Right.
the clients, even, the perception. And so, that's where the next time I've seen them be like, oh my gosh, it was costing us way more in the end. Like we should have
Right.
just cut ties sooner. And
Yeah.
I think that's too. We're all human. Nothing's perfect cookie cutter. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be ebb and flows, but also too, it's like sometimes you got to do the long hard work to get the right
Yeah.
people or to get to the gem. Even
Right.
too.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess that's what I appreciated, is he isn't an HR person, right? He didn't go to school for HR. He didn't go, so it wasn't that you have to have this, you know, management degree to figure out how to be a good manager, to be a good hiring partner. But it doesn't, but there is also no magic wand,
Yeah.
right? The magic wand is you putting in the time, you
Yeah.
putting in
And
the thing,
everybody can show up as leaders, no
right?
matter what your role, what your title is. There's all these leadership things and qualities that you should bring to the table, or to continuously learn and grow and expand on. And that was what I thought was really cool too, just from his background and knowledge too, of just showing up as a cool, good leader.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you are a team of one right now.
Yeah.
So after hearing about this and as you're thinking of growing your business, is has hiring ever been scary? Is it less scary? Is it, like, where are you on that fearometer?
Yeah. Well, I think what I've learned over the years, and I think sometimes too, sometimes some things maybe cloud our judgment or our thoughts on things. Um, I always kind of grown up thinking I'm never going to manage people. I don't want to deal with the drama or the things or the dynamics and whatnot. And then when I've had some opportunities or just different things, when I've thought of them, like, oh my gosh, I am kind of leading this group, or maybe I don't have the exact title of it, but I'm kind of managing people. I think that's the part too, where who knows where this business will go, but also too, I love people. I love the connection. I love that we're human, that you can help groom people, mentor people. And so I don't know what the future is, but I think deep down, I'm sad that I always considered that I would never be a manager.
Because you let things go that you didn't have to, because you had a preconceived notion of what that means.
Yeah. And that's kind of too with sales. I mean, I think there are certain things that we've learned or just our society has told us over the years that that's the interpretation that we have. Salesy is so salesy and ugh, like never wanted to do that. But deep down, I'm like, actually, I really kind of like sales. You
Right.
know, if I know the product or know the things, it's easy to sell it. And so I think that's where too sometimes we get a new perception of things or a new um, look on
Yeah.
stuff when we get different ideas from other people or hear it differently. So,
There. Awesome.
yeah.
All right. Well, I have a thing that I need to get to, and there I'm in a cop to squat in a room that I'm been placed whenever you're ready to leave. So I am going to politely let them not have to kick me out. And I will see you soon.
All right, enjoy that cocktail.
I will.